Hello, hope you're having a good day and thank you very much for coming here to watch this video. If you're here, you're probably wondering what to expect from the Ultimate Fighter finale matchups taking place this weekend at UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Borralho, and you've come to the right place. I've got over 15 years of experience betting on the UFC. I've made a profit every single year over the last 15 years since I've been betting on the UFC, and I've put many hours of research into all of the fights that we're going to be talking about in this video in a lot of depth, and we're going to be talking about them from a betting perspective. So if this week you're not too sure what to expect from Valentin and Loder or Ofli and Santos, do not worry, you're in good hands. I'm going to be going very deep on these fights. I've spent a lot of time learning about these fighters and I've got a pretty good read on how these matchups are likely to go. So by the time you finish watching this video, you're also probably going to have a pretty good idea of how these matchups are going to go. And if you find this content useful, please hit the like button below and subscribe if you haven't already. The growth on my channel is so slow because these long form, really deep videos, they don't appeal to many people. A lot of people find them boring, they don't find them that useful, but if you find them useful and you hit the like button, it really helps grow the channel, which I'd really appreciate, as it takes a lot of work to put these videos together. And if you are interested in live betting with me, obviously live betting is my bread and butter. We talk about this every week. We do extremely well live betting on the UFC. We make a profit most months, most events. And so if that's something you're interested in, check out the links in the description below. You can learn a little bit about my speciality, which is live betting on the UFC. And we've got a video on this webpage which also shows you basically what to expect if you live bet with me in my group. So check it out. So let's start off by taking a deep dive into the main event of this weekend's card, which is a very interesting fight between Caio Borralho and Jared Canonnier. Now, I'm sure by the end of this breakdown video, I will have pronounced Jared's name in about 5 different ways, but hopefully by the time he retires, I will have learned to pronounce his name correctly. Anyway, let's start off by taking a look at the odds. So we can see that Borralho is a pretty big favourite at average odds of about 1.41, which is going to be minus 244 for an implied probability of 71%. If we take a look at the odds on Cannonier, he's around an average of 2.95, which is going to be plus 195 for an implied probability of 34%. So Cannonier is 40 years old, 5'11" with a 77.5-inch reach, and Borralho is 31 years old, 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. So both guys are about the same size. Borralho a little taller, Cannonier with a slightly longer reach, but we can see there's a massive age gap between these two, with Borralho being 9 years younger than Cannonier. And at 40 years old, Cannonier is at the stage of his career where he should be declining significantly from fight to fight. I haven't seen major signs of declining in Cannonier, just one or two things which I'll mention when we get into actually breaking down how these two match up. But obviously at 40 years old, father time can creep up on you very quickly, and obviously father time is undefeated. So Cannonier is at that stage in his career where it is very dangerous to bet on him, because on any given night he could show up and look absolutely terrible. Whereas Borralho at 31 years old, he's going to be making big improvements from fight to fight, and we are seeing that in him, to be fair. Obviously, to quantify this age gap statistically, we know that Borralho, being 9 years younger than Cannonier, is statistically likely to win around 70% of the time. That's 7-0. So obviously when there's a 9-year age gap in a fight, the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time, which is a massive percentage, which I do find very interesting, because if we look at the odds on Borralho, his odds carry an implied probability of 71%, which is pretty much exactly where his statistical advantage in terms of age gives him in his chances of winning this fight, which is interesting to me, because from a stylistic point of view, this is a very difficult fight for Borralho and a very good fight for Cannonier. So it's almost like these odds have been set based on that age statistic, because when you look at how these two match up stylistically, Borralho doesn't really have many advantages. He is certainly second best when it comes to striking. He does have better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than Jared Canonnier, but I'm not even particularly sure if he's the better wrestler out of the two, and the Makhmud Muradov fight is the reason why I hold that opinion, although it was coming up to 2 years ago now. And like we say, Borralho, 31 years old, is going to be making big improvements from fight to fight. whereas Cannonier is going to be declining. So very interesting fight this. Straight off the bat, we've said that this is a very good stylistic matchup for Cannonier, which it is. But if you've been watching my content for a long time, you know we do well betting pre-fight on the UFC. We've made a profit every year over the last 15 years, and we continue to get better, we continue to improve. And the reason why we are successful betting on the UFC is because we have core principles that we stick to, which enable us to get or keep ourselves out of trouble. And these core principles have been developed over the last 15 years, where I've been learning from mistakes, I've been learning more about the sport, been learning about trends, and I've just been learning about certain types of bets which over the long term are difficult to make money on, and at best you could probably, you know, just about break even on them if you're lucky. And so with matchups like this, what I can tell you from all my years of experience is it is a very, very difficult path to walk to be profitable betting on fighters like Cannonier in situations such as this. So when you look at our profitability chart on pre-fight UFC bets, obviously over the last 2 years we've done extremely well. You know, we've consistently grinded out profits most months in pre-fight betting, and I don't place many pre-fight bets. I have a very conservative style of betting, but when I do place pre-fight bets, more often than not they win. We do well on them. And when you look at our profitability chart on pre-fight bets from, like, say the last 5 or 6 years, going back to like pre-2021, you'll see about a year to 18-month period of just break even. And then what you'll see is, you know, us consistently grinding out profits over the last 2 years. And the reason how we were able to break out of that long period of break even is by eliminating bets on guys like Cannonier. Because what I did was basically go back through all of the bets that we'd placed over that year to 18-month period and identified trends amongst the majority of our losing bets. And by eliminating those categories of bets which were consistently costing us money, over the last 2 years, we've been able to consistently make profits most months pre-fight betting on the UFC. Like I say, we don't place many bets, but when we do, we have a big edge. And one of the categories of bets, one of the styles of bets that were consistently costing us money were bets on guys like Cannonier, where, you know, you would have a fighter like Cannonier with clear advantages over his opponent. And if you research this fight, it's very difficult to favour Borralho, in my opinion. If you know the sport of MMA, this is a very bad stylistic matchup for Borralho. And based on that, we would place a bet on a guy like Cannonier. But over, you know, a year to 18-month period, these kind of bets were consistently costing us money because older fighters find ways to lose. And that's a principle that, you know, we've identified over a long period of time. And since we've eliminated betting on guys like Cannonier from our betting strategies, we've performed much better. And so I kind of have a philosophy with bets such as this, where I use the analogy of trying to create a favorable betting environment for yourself, where you are essentially betting on the easiest mode of a video game possible, right? Because one of the biggest weapons that we've got against the betting sites, one of the biggest tools that we've got that enables us to be profitable over such a long period of time, is that we can choose when and when not to place bets, right? And so there's certain types of bets which is going to make being profitable betting on any sport a lot more difficult. And I call playing the game on hard mode when people do that. Or you can play the game on easy mode, which is what I try to do with UFC pre-fight betting, where I only ever place pre-fight bets when we overwhelmingly stack the odds in our favour, and by doing that, we do well. Don't place many bets, but when we do place them, we do well. So when it comes to a bet such as this, where we identify that Cannonier has a lot of advantages over his opponent, but we can't ignore the fact that he's 9 years older and Father Time is undefeated and 40-year-old fighters are on a steep decline. We have to keep that age statistic at the forefront of our mind, where we know if we just blind bet on UFC, 70% of the time, guys like Cannonier are going to lose in matchups like this, right? Irrespective of how the individuals match up, 70% of the time, Cannonier is going to lose this fight. Just blind betting that stat over the long term. So when you try to make money betting on the UFC by picking winners, betting on guys like Jared Canonnier in fights like this, I think you're playing the game on hard mode. I would describe it as being the equivalent of trying to push a boulder up a mountain, right? What is easier to do, pushing a boulder up a mountain or pushing a boulder down a mountain, right? Let me just make my point on that. If you bet on Cannonier this weekend, you're betting against a really strong trend. You've got to beat a trend which says he's going to lose 70% of the time. It's not going to be easy for you to cherry pick those 30% of aging fighters that defy that statistic. So you're playing the game on hard mode. Instead of pushing a boulder down a mountain, you're trying to push the boulder up a mountain. A much better strategy, a much better approach to pre-fight betting on the UFC would be to look for opportunities where you can bet with that statistic in your favor. You can bet with the wind behind your back. You can bet by pushing the boulder down the mountain. You can essentially play the game on easy mode. Because you know that if you just blind bet a guy like Borralho, over the long term, he's going to find a way to win 70% of the time. Maybe Borralho gets injured in the fight, or maybe Cannonier gets injured in the fight because he's old, or maybe he gets flash KO'd because his chin's gone, or maybe he shows up looking way worse than usual because he's declined. Maybe the younger guy is improved. So even though this is a bad stylistic matchup for Borralho, there are all these other intangibles which could result in him winning. Now, the problem with betting Borralho this weekend is that his odds of 1.41, you know, minus 244 for an implied probability of 71%, they perfectly reflect where that age statistic is at. So there's no value here in betting Borralho, especially when you take into consideration the fact that he's second best to Cannonier almost everywhere. So that's kind of before we go into like the weeds of how these two match up stylistically, how I would view this fight, my philosophy on it. I very much lean Cannonier. This is a great stylistic matchup for him. I think he can give Borralho hell. But I have no desire to bet on a 40-year-old fighter against a young, hungry, improving bull like Borralho, because old guys find ways to lose, and I know long-term it is very difficult for me to make money betting on guys like Cannonier. At best, I can hope to break even over the long term. I'm not really interested in doing that by doing so much work and putting so much money at risk for such little gain. It's just not worth it to me. I'd prefer to keep it tight, be conservative, and look for much better, much stronger positions for me to put my cash in, which is what we do, which is why we're very successful over the long term. So this is a great fight for live betting. Obviously, we've done a lot of homework on these two. We know a lot about these two. There's a lot of footage on both guys. So I'm very, very confident this is the kind of matchup we will hopefully be able to snipe a winner on in live betting. Live betting's our bread and butter. We do extremely well on it. But from a pre-fight betting point of view, I think based on the age statistics, these odds are probably exactly where they should be. But for those of you that do want to roll the dice and gamble a little bit and pick a spot and place a pre-fight bet on this one, let's break down how these two do match up from a stylistic point of view based on their past performances, and then hopefully that will be useful for you. So obviously it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup. Borralho primarily the grappler, Cannonier primarily the striker. Borralho is more well-rounded, I would say, than Cannonier, but also not as skilled anywhere in particular as Cannonier is as skilled a striker. And so yeah, it's a very interesting fight. Where do we begin? Alright, so first of all, let's talk about the possible signs of decline in Jared Canonnier. So obviously one of the first things that go as you start to decline and get older is your chin. And it is worth noting that Cannonier has been rocked and hurt real bad in his last two fights. Well, obviously he was knocked out in his last fight by Nassourdine Imavov. And if you go back and watch the first round of his fight against Marvin Vettori, he was in a lot of trouble. Vettori almost got him out of there in round 1. He was hurt very bad. He was rocked very, very bad. So what is particularly concerning to me about this is that Imavov and Vettori aren't particularly dangerous. For the most part, they're volume strikers. If we bring up their records and you look at Vettori's record, you can see that he is an absolute decisionator. The last time he knocked someone out was, I guess, 2015, whoever Jack Mason is. But he only has one knockout, which appears to be this one, in his entire like 26 fight career, and has never knocked anyone out in the UFC. So the fact that he did come close to finishing Cannonier and had him so badly hurt on the feet is a red flag. Now obviously Imavov is a bit more dangerous than Marvin Vettori, but not a whole lot. Again, we can see that you know, he is also a bit of a decisionator, and even though he does have a few finishes, this has mostly been as a result of his opponents basically becoming too tired to defend themselves. So neither Vettori nor Imavov is that dangerous on the feet, yet Imavov was able to knock Cannonier out, and Vettori was able to come pretty close to knocking him out. This is, you know, pretty notable to me, because what you often find with fighters like Cannonier, who have been incredibly durable throughout their career, like if you look at his record, you know, he's only been knocked out twice in his entire career, leading up to the Vettori fight. Once against Dominic Reyes, and then once against Sean Jordan. But this fight was his UFC debut. Jordan was an absolute tank, had crazy power. Jordan was a big knockout artist, and this fight probably also would have been at heavyweight. Yeah, Cannonier started his career at heavyweight. So Cannonier is very durable. He's got a great chin. He's tough as nails. So the fact that he's been hurt so bad in his last two is a potential sign that he is on a decline. Borralho isn't particularly dangerous on the feet. He's more of a volume striker. And we look at his record, you can see, you know, he doesn't really have any knockouts or any knockout wins. You know, yes, he hurt Craig on the feet. But outside of that, apart from this win with punches against Douglas Nascimento, it's all submission wins and decision wins. So Borralho perhaps isn't the most well-equipped fighter to make Cannonier pay if his chin is starting to go, which it likely is at 40 years old. But having said that, Imavov and especially Marvin Vettori weren't particularly well-equipped to trouble Cannonier on the feet either, and they both did. So that is something worth thinking about, a potential sign that Cannonier is declining. But in terms of how these two match up from a stylistic point of view, like we've said, it is a striker versus grappler matchup, and on the feet, Cannonier has a huge advantage. Very good boxing, good footwork, good movement, good defensively, usually for the most part durable throughout the majority of his career, great cardio, aggressive, all that kind of good stuff. Borralho is a little bit loosey-goosey on the feet, a little bit sloppy, not the best defensively, not the most dangerous. Cannonier is just a lot more technical than Borralho and a lot more skilled. But obviously, Borralho wouldn't expect to have the advantage on the feet. He's primarily a grappler. He's going to want to get this fight to the ground. Now, Borralho does have pretty good offensive wrestling. He's got good timing on his takedown entries. But we know that Cannonier is pretty hard to take down, pretty hard to hold down as well. So while I do think that Borralho can get Cannonier down, whether he can get him down and keep him down for long enough to do anything for to him or score points is another matter. The thing about Borralho's ground game is that he does lack physicality on the ground, and he does give up position a lot. I'd recommend going and watching the Makhmudmuradov fight to see exactly what I mean. Yeah, he just gives up position a lot on the ground. He's a little bit sloppy on the ground. And because Cannonier is so good at scrambling back up to his feet, when you do take him down, he shows a lot of urgency to pop back up quickly. If you give him a little bit of space on the ground, he will just immediately stand back up. And Borralho gives his opponents a lot of space on the ground. And the thing about Borralho is he also slows down a lot as fights wear on, whereas Cannonier's got really good cardio. He can go at a decent pace for 3 to 5 rounds, no problem. Sorry guys, I'm just going to interject. I finished recording the breakdown video for Borralho and Cannonier, and then I was like, you know what, I probably should have shown some footage of Borralho on the ground and how much he gives up position. I'm always stuck in this place when I do these breakdown videos where I'm trying to keep them as short as possible, but then I'm conscious that when I say things, a lot of people never believe what I'm saying, especially if they hold really strong opinions over certain fighters. And I know a lot of people are going to be on Borralho this week. I don't know why. Obviously, wiki capping is strong in the game. People don't really do fight research. They kind of just look at win-loss records and make assumptions about shit. We saw it with Gamrot and Hooker last week. So I will show a little bit of footage of Borralho and how much he gives up position on the ground, so you can kind of see why this could be a very difficult fight for Borralho to use his grappling. So we'll quickly skim through the Muradov fight. Obviously, it is worth noting that this fight did take place a long time ago now, man. It did take place 2 years ago, so he could have improved a lot since then. But if we just skip through, we'll make this very, very quick. So you can see that Borralho shoots a really nice double leg takedown there. But what I want you to pay attention to with Borralho is how much space he gives his opponents from top position. This is one of the reasons why I think it's going to be very difficult for him to hold Cannonier down. Look at the spacing here. So you can see he gives Muradov tons of space off his back to scramble back up to his feet. And Muradov doesn't really take the invitation, lies on his back and allows Borralho to take half guard. Borralho does some good stuff there though. Obviously he recognises the threat that Muradov can use the cage to wall walk back up to his feet. So he starts to try and move Muradov away from the cage, which he does successfully. He takes the ability of Muradov to walk back up to his feet away from him by moving him away from the cage. But then just look at things like this. So he's on top of Muradov in mount, but he just gives up position there, gets reversed from mount. You know, not great. And then 1 minute and 25 left to go in the round. Just keep an eye on the fight clock here. You can see Muradov's in top position. And if we just skip through, you know, we just have this sequence where Borralho kind of just lies on his back, doesn't show any urgency to get back up to his feet. Very bad fight IQ from Borralho. Just, you know, allows Muradov to go back on top of him. And I mean, this is in round one. This is pretty low level stuff from Borralho. So yeah, not good from Borralho. If we go into round two, again, we're just skipping through to make the breakdown as quick as possible. We can see nice double leg there from Muradov. Now, I wouldn't expect Cannonier to be shooting any takedowns, but all the same, you can see pretty bad takedown defense from Borralho to just give up a cheap takedown like that. There's a crazy scramble from both guys though, and Borralho gets into top position. Very nice. But once again, he's in top position. There's 2 minutes 45 seconds left to go on the clock. He's absolutely cruising, and what happens? Well, Muradov reverses him from mount yet again. Absolutely crazy. So we've seen Borralho in the same dominant position twice now, and twice he's been reversed in exactly the same way. So there's 2 minutes 35 left to go in the round. Muradov in top position. If we just skip through, we can see Borralho very weak off his back. Muradov holds him down easily, beats Borralho up from top position. Borralho looking very low level, very weak off his back, very low level on the ground before finally scrambling out right at the end of the round. If we go into round three, again, we're skipping through. We're trying to make this as quick as possible. Muradov having so much success against Borralho on the ground, thought, you know what, I'm going to take this guy down again. Look at that terrible takedown defense from Borralho in this third round. And he does use this guillotine to hit a reversal into top position. Very nice. And gets the submission win, which is very nice right at the end of the round. Actually, he doesn't get a submission win. Fight pass actually times out, so there's an error on that video. But yeah, you can see that Borralho, not the best on the ground, gives up position a lot, weak off his back. And that's why at the very beginning of this breakdown I said that I think Cannonier may be a better MMA grappler than Borralho, because he has a far better understanding of position over submission. I just don't rate Borralho's ground game at all. I think it's pretty shit, and I think that footage that I just showed you guys reflects that. So just a little interjection. Now let's get back with the rest of the breakdown. So this is one of those matchups where when you look at footage of both guys, I think Borralho is going to find it difficult to use his grappling in this fight. I think Cannonier's takedown offense, defensive wrestling, ability to pop back up to his feet quickly when he gets taken down is good enough to keep this fight standing. And on the feet, I give him a really big advantage. So I think Cannonier is going to be able to turn this into a stand-up fight and use his superior striking to win. That's how I see it. Now, you know, obviously at the beginning of this breakdown, we spoke about all the reasons why I wouldn't bet on Cannonier as a 40-year-old fighter, but I definitely lean towards him. And if you want to bet on this fight, there's no doubt that Jared is the stronger side to be on. The risk to reward ratio is so bad on Borralho. You know, you'd have to give Borralho like a 75% chance or better to get any value on him. You know, you'd have to win 3 out of 4 bets in this odds range just to fucking break even. It just isn't worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, in my opinion. I think Borralho is a pretty bad bet. If you really want to bet this fight, Cannonier definitely has the better risk to reward ratio, but obviously old fighters find ways to lose, and at 40 years old, Father Time is going to be coming hard for Cannonier. So if you do bet him, you are putting your money in a lot of danger. In terms of the over-under though, pretty likely this fight goes deep, and the odds reflect that. If we look at Borralho's record, he's a bit of a decisionator, not particularly dangerous. If you look at Cannonier, also a bit of a decisionator and not too dangerous, although I do think Borralho could be in a bit of trouble here if he can't get the fight to the ground. So yeah, the over 3.5 rounds probably does hit, but I don't love the odds enough to be betting that personally. And in terms of props, I think most likely outcome is actually Cannonier by decision at odds of 6.0 plus 500. And I actually think the odds are quite generous on that. So if you do want to sprinkle a little bit of money to make watching this fight more interesting, Cannonier by decision, I don't think is a bad bet. So yeah, you might want to try going for that one. So I hope you found that useful. Now let's move on to the next one. Alright, now let's break down one of the best fights on this card, one of the most interesting matchups between Angela Hill and Tabitha Ricci. And this is a fight that I've changed my opinion on multiple times this week. It was one of those fights where when I first started watching some of Ricci's matchups, definitely leaned towards her based on my perception of Hill's strengths and weaknesses. And then when I went and watched some footage of Hill's recent fights, I kind of flipped and favoured Hill in this matchup. But it's a super interesting fight, a very complex fight, and again, I'm hoping you're going to get a lot of value from watching this. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds, we can see that both girls are in the even money odds range, where if you shop around, you can bet them at exactly the same odds of about 1.91, which is going to be minus 110 for an implied probability of 52%. So Hill is 39 years old, 5'3", with a 64.5-inch reach. Ricci, 29 years old, 5'1", with a 61-inch reach. So we start off by talking about these X factors because again they're kind of meaningful. So Ricci, in terms of wingspan, is one of the smallest fighters in the UFC, and obviously that means that Hill has a slight height and a very nice 3.5-inch reach advantage, which is pretty significant in a fight like this because 3.5 inches makes up a decent overall percentage of their height. You know, 3.5 inches in the strawweight division is a lot more meaningful than the 3.5-inch reach in the heavyweight division. And Hill also fights long and knows how to use it. She's got long kicks, you know, a nice jab, you know, nice range finding strikes. But obviously Ricci has got a pretty nice X factor on her side in that she is 10 years younger than Angela Hill. And we know that the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time, 7-0, when there is a 10-year age gap in a fight. So when we broke down the fight between Caio Borralho and Jared Canonnier, we were saying how it was a really good stylistic matchup for Cannonier. But if you watch that breakdown, we were talking about how it was very difficult to make money betting against very strong trends such as these age statistics. And so even though, you know, in terms of how they match up stylistically, it's a good fight for Cannonier, trying to cherry pick those 30% of fighters that are 10 years older than their opponent who are going to win is a very difficult game to play long term. You're just playing the sports betting game on hard mode. But then on the flip side, if you look at Caio Borralho's odds, we were saying that, you know, his odds reflect the implied probability of his odds reflect the age trend that favors him, and therefore, you know, there's no real value in betting Borralho this weekend. With Richie, it's a bit different, because obviously, if we know that, you know, the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time when there is a 10-year age gap in a fight, then if you were to just blind bet fighters like Richie over the long term, you'd make a profit, you know, as long as you were placing plus EV value bets, right? And in this instance, if you're just blind betting that statistic, and we know 70% of the time the younger fighter is going to win when there's a 10-year age gap in a fight, well, if you just blind bet Richie this weekend, you've got an 18% margin over the bookies. With Borralho, the odds are exactly where they should be based on that stat, so there's no value. Borralho would be a bad bet, but Richie would be a good bet. So obviously I'm not the kind of guy that would just blind bet statistics, but it is a very strong statistic that is hard to ignore. And for that reason, if you are a statistics-based bettor, this is a pretty interesting bet to consider, because, you know, an 18% margin over a statistic like that, it's pretty huge. What I would say though, and the reason why I don't blind bet statistics, is the statistics are only useful when they're interpreted correctly. And obviously what that statistic is useful for showing is that this is a young person's game, and fighters decline as they get older. Younger fighters improve, you know, they're more capable athletically, they're healthier, and they're less likely to fight with injuries, significant head trauma and all that kind of stuff. But there will always be exceptions to the rule. Daniel Cormier won a heavyweight title in his 40s. We see a lot of fighters, you know, have some of their best years, some of their most success, you know, deep into their career, at this stage in their careers where you would expect them to be declining significantly, and they defy all the odds. Jan Blachowicz was another one. There are outliers. And I would definitely say Angela Hill is an outlier, because even though she is 39 years old, she is getting better from fight to fight. Angela Hill is still improving, and she isn't showing any signs of decline either. You know, earlier in Hill's career, she was plagued by bad cardio issues, bad balance, which affected her takedown defense. Yet in recent years, her cardio has looked great, to the extent that she actually outworks opponents now, and she finishes stronger, and she's like the cardio machine. And her balance has got a lot better also, which makes it very difficult to take down. You know, if you look at her record, you can kind of see her improvement to some extent, where, you know, in this run of fights, she only won, you know, 1 in 6. And then obviously over the last few years, she's won 4 of her last 6. 5 of her last, this is a grappling match, so it would be 4 of her last 5. So this kind of shows Hill's improvement, right? You'd expect the opposite. You'd expect, as Hill to be getting older, for her to be doing worse and declining, but she's not. She's actually getting better, and she's beating young, hungry bulls as well, like Denise Gomez, like Luana Pinheiro, like Emily Ducote, like Lupita Godinez. And of course, we can debate the mistakes that these fighters made in those matchups, and we can debate the bad fight IQ, the bad decision making that led to Hill beating these girls. But ultimately, Hill is beating young, hungry bulls in this division, young, up-and-coming prospects, which is an unusual thing for a 39-year-old fighter to be doing pretty consistently like Hill is. And so now she faces another up-and-coming prospect in Tabitha Ritchie, 29 years old, making big improvements from fight to fight. And this was a big learning for me when I started researching Ritchie this week. I didn't realize how much she was improving from fight to fight. It's very impressive. Ritchie is a fighter that is improving exponentially from fight to fight. So this weekend against Hill, you'd expect her to look even better than she has done before. And the big improvements that I'm seeing from Ritchie is in her strength, her power, her physicality, her athleticism, and above all, her tenacity. So if you look at her early fights, she was pretty physically weak, didn't have any power in her hands, would go into a defensive shell quite easily. Didn't have the highest output on the feet or with her grappling, to be fair. But then if you look at her last fight against Tisha Pennington, she was absolutely relentless. And even though I do feel that was a terrible decision, an absolute robbery, the media was split on how they scored that fight. But I think the people that scored that fight for Richie need to go back and watch the fight and learn the scoring criteria. Because it was a very, very bad decision. Pennington did win the fight very clearly. However, what it did show was massive improvements in Richie's offensive wrestling, her fight IQ, her game planning, her strategy, and like I say, her tenacity. I was very impressed by Richie's performance against Pennington, which I'm going to call a loss, right? It will go down on paper as a win, but she did lose that fight if you have eyeballs and you understand MMA scoring. But even in defeat, she looked damn good, and that was the best performance of her career. So how do these two match up from a stylistic point of view? Well, it's a classic striker versus grappler matchup. Angela Hill, very much the striker. Tabitha Ritchie, very much the grappler. And this fight is going to come down to whether or not Ritchie can get the fight to the ground and keep the fight on the ground for long enough to score enough points to win a decision. Because it's obviously very likely that this fight goes to a decision. Now, on the feet, I think it's a difficult matchup for Ritchie. Angela Hill's got great footwork, great movement. She knows how to use her length. She's got a very nice jab. She actually lands a decent amount of damage with her strikes as well, particularly off her jab. She's got a nice kicking game. Just throws an overall really diverse range of attacks, and she's also aggressive and throws a high volume of strikes as well. Ritchie is one of these fighters that doesn't really have any pop in her shots or any impactfulness in her strikes. So she's not going to be able to hurt Hill on the feet or get respect in there. She's probably going to take a decent amount of damage on the feet and get outstruck by a decent margin. Having said that, what I saw from her in the Pennington fight means that she can make this fight visually close. Because in Ritchie's early fights in the UFC, if she was getting outstruck or taking damage or running into a little bit of trouble on the feet, she would kind of just go into a defensive shell and stop throwing. The Pennington fight was completely different. Pennington was outstriking her comfortably, clearly, inflicting a good amount of damage, busting Ritchie up. But Ritchie showed a real determination in that fight to just bite down on the mouthpiece and come forward swinging, irrespective of the fact that she was getting outstruck and taking damage, which I love because it shows that she's got the dog in her, which she didn't have in her early fights. So that's a big sign of improvement. Now, if she does that against Hill, it will likely just result in her getting outstruck and taking more damage, but we know how MMA judges can be. And if Hill is on the outside trying to chip away at Ritchie and counter-strike, and Ritchie's just biting down on the mouthpiece, coming forward aggressively, getting in her face, roughing her up, engaging her in the clinch, then obviously the rounds can be visually close and the judges could go either way. I think it'll be competitive on the feet, but Hill has the clear edge. Now, in terms of grappling, things get extremely interesting because we've talked a bit about Ritchie's improvement. We've said that at this deep stage in Angela Hill's career, she is still continuing to improve. And actually, I forgot to mention the reason why I think Hill is continuing to improve. And I think Hill's still improving at 39 years old because she didn't start combat sports until very late. I think she didn't do any combat sports training until she was 23 years old, which would explain why she's experiencing more career longevity than your average fighter. Because if your average fighter was competing at a decent level in, say, wrestling or karate or taekwondo and boxing in their teenage years, and then they start to naturally decline in their mid-30s to late 30s. Well, if Angela Hill didn't start any combat sports training until she was 23, it kind of explains why her career is extended a little bit and why she's an outlier and why she's not declining at the same stage of her career as most other UFC fighters would have started combat sports training earlier. So both these girls are making big improvements from fight to fight. We've seen them improve a lot from fight to fight. And the biggest area of improvement in Angela Hill's game is her takedown offense, ground game, and ability to scramble back up to her feet. I mean, she went the distance with both Mackenzie Dern and Verna Jandiroba, which are not easy things to do, yet she did it to both of them, and she submitted a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner in Luana Pinheiro. Now granted, Pinheiro did gas out, and that was the primary reason why Hill was able to hit that submission. However, Hill wasn't submitting anyone years ago when she had that low-level ground game, and so just hitting a submission on someone like Pinheiro shows the improvement and evolution in Hill's game, irrespective of what you think about Pinheiro's performance. So Angela Hill is one of these fighters that these days is very difficult to take down and hold down. She's got good balance. She's very good at scrambling back up to her feet. She's got excellent submission defense. And the thing about Hill is, back a few years ago, when she would gas very badly, she would often lack the energy to work out of positions on the ground or scramble back up to her feet if you took her down. But now that her cardio is so much better, it's very difficult to wear her out with grappling. And so she's a very difficult fighter to take down and control. Angie's not easy to take down and control. She's very scrambly. She's got a decent top game herself. She's obviously good friends with Jessica Penne. You know, MMA fans love to make fun of Jessica Penne, but you know, if you follow Jessica Penne's career, you were watching her back in the Invicta days when she was the atomweight champion. Penne's ground game was fucking nasty, man. She was a ninja on the ground, so no surprise that Hill's ground game has evolved so much. Training with someone like Jessica Penne every day, Penne's ground game is very, very nasty, and you can really see iron sharpens iron, and Hill's ground game is developed tremendously. So when Richie first came to the UFC, she would be one of these fighters that would kind of shoot 1 or 2 takedowns per round. But if she didn't get them, she would then kind of go into a defensive shell and not really go back to her grappling. What I really like about the evolution in Richie's skill set is that she showed real persistence in the Pennington fight in trying to get the fight to the ground. And this was something that we hadn't seen a whole lot of Richie in the past, so I want to show you some footage of it because I'm pretty impressed by it. If we go to the second round, because she doesn't really do it too much in the first, so if we go to round 2, we'll bring this up here, there we go. So I just want to show you the persistence on Richie's grappling. So when we talk about MMA grappling, a lot of the concepts we talk about, particularly in the live betting group where we're kind of commentating and breaking these fights down as they happen, is the persistence of grappling. So I guess a really good example of this would be the recent fight between Jonata Denise and Carl Williams, right? So when we talk about MMA grappling and persistence, if you think about you know, the path to victory for certain fighters like Richie or Carl Williams. So what are Richie's paths to victory this weekend? Well, it's unlikely that she's going to outstrike Angela Hill because Hill's a better striker. So in order to win this fight, she's going to need to get Hill to the ground and keep her on the ground, right? Now, what's the best way to take someone down and keep them down? Well, it's to shoot takedowns, right? And the more takedowns you shoot, the higher the probability you've got of keeping your opponent on the ground for long enough to score enough points to win a decision. So when you see these fighters that don't shoot many takedowns per round, like a Carl Williams, it's very dangerous to bet on them, because you know if Denise does anything to shoot that first initial takedown, you can't trust Williams to then shoot another takedown in that round, or another 2 or 3 takedowns in that round, which means he's likely going to get outstruck in that round if Denise can just stop the one takedown that Williams is going to shoot, right? So the ultimate sort of MMA grappler to bet on is an MMA grappler that is persistent, because you know if they attempt a takedown and they don't get it, they're going to keep trying to get the fight to the ground until they either fail or they do get the takedown. That's what you want, and that's what Richie showed me in her last fight against Pennington, which I absolutely love, which I'm going to show you right now. So if we hit play again, we're going to try and keep the breakdown as quick as possible. But a minute into the round, Richie had basically got outstruck pretty clear in round 1. So by the second round, the penny had kind of dropped that she needed to get this fight to the ground. So you can see a minute into the round, she drives Pennington into the cage and just starts hustling for takedowns. Now, she doesn't have anything here. She's not in particularly deep on Pennington's legs. She doesn't have control of Pennington's body, but she's trying, she's working, right? She's working to try and get the fight to the ground. She doesn't have anything at the moment, but she's working to get in lower on the legs, lower on the hips of Pennington, so that she can try and upset her balance. So this is what I really like about Richie. You know, she's looking for an inside trip here. And I'm going to have to let this 3 minutes play out so that you can fully appreciate the chain wrestling of Richie. You know, now she realizes she needs to try and get in deeper on the legs, so she's going to the double leg there. You know, really good, you know, double leg attempt there, but Pennington's got that low center of gravity, so it's difficult to upset her balance and get her down. But she still keeps control of the body here, which is very, very nice. Still keeps control of the body, but she's just hustling, right? You see some MMA fighters that will attempt that double leg that Richie just attempted, and when it fails, they'll be like, oh well, it failed, and then they'll go back to the middle of the octagon against the superior striker and carry on getting outstruck. Here you can see Richie attempted the double leg, it failed, and now then she started working for the single leg. Now the single leg has failed, so she's like, okay, I'll go back to the clinch, I'll try something else, I'll beat Pennington up in the clinch a little bit, and maybe, you know, I can get an inside trip, an outside trip, a judo throw, something like that. But she keeps working. Look, she's going for a judo throw now. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, I'm going to stay on you. I'm going to jump back in on a single leg. I'm going to try and upset your balance on a single leg. Okay, that didn't work. She tried to reach for a double. Okay, I can't reach the double. I'm going to go back to the single leg. This is good stuff. This is all good stuff. And yes, she's not having any success with it. She's losing this round. You know, Pennington's outstriking her in these positions. She's keeping the fight up. Right now, she's in on a double leg. Look, she goes for a double leg. She doesn't get it, but she's trying. And we're going to let this minute and a half play out because it's important for you to appreciate how hard Richie's working here, her tenacity, how well she's doing. I get very excited about performances such as this because Richie didn't do this earlier in her career. At 29 years old, this is a sign of massive improvement. And if Richie keeps improving at this rate, she's going to be a lot better than she is now. I'm not going to make any outlandish claims because I don't actually think Richie has got the package she needs to become a UFC champion. I think there's very, very good strawweight prospects in the division who are always going to cause her big trouble. But anyway, she's looking for an outside trip here off a body lock. Doesn't get any of the takedowns. And then in the final minute of the round, she just basically gets outstruck. But I wanted to show you that because obviously Richie's very tenacious, very persistent with her grappling, and has decent chain wrestling where she's going from inside trips, outside trips, single legs, to doubles, back to single legs, to body lock takedowns. I like that because in football we've got this expression where if you don't shoot, you don't score. Meaning, if you don't take a shot on goal, the ball ain't going to go in the net. And the more shots you take, the more chance you've got of the ball going in the net. So if you only shoot 1 or 2 takedowns per round, you're making life difficult for yourself because if one or 2 takedowns doesn't complete, you're not going to get the takedown. But if you shoot 10 takedowns per round, you increase the probability of being successful with one of them, which is what Richie's trying to do for the majority of that Pennington fight, which I really, really like. Or maybe not the majority, but a good chunk of it. So what does that mean in the context of how she matches up against Angela Hill this weekend? Well, it's an interesting one because at distance, Richie's offensive wrestling isn't the best. So when she's shooting single legs, double legs from the middle of the octagon, she's not particularly effective with them. And Angela Hill's got good balance. She's good at reading the takedown entries and dealing with them very early. And so most of Tabitha Richie's takedown attempts, as we've just seen in the Pennington fight, come up against the clinch, or up against the cage in the clinch, where she works from a position above her opponent's hips, and then she kind of works to get lower in on their legs with single legs, double legs, trips, to try and get the fight to the ground that way. Now, there are some issues with this approach to getting the fight to the ground. The first issue being is that the clinch is one of Angela Hill's best positions. She started life as a Muay Thai fighter. She's got a base in Muay Thai. So Angela Hill is one of those girls that is very comfortable in the clinch and very strong in the clinch. Angela Hill is also one of the very few girls in the strawweight division that can inflict a lot of damage from the clinch. She's got devastating knees to the body, very, 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 very vicious elbows on the inside. So when you look at Richie attempting takedowns with persistent wrestling against Pennington, she didn't really have any risk in those positions up against the cage because Pennington wasn't really doing anything to her other than trying to stuff the takedown. But when Richie is going to be working for takedowns in the clinch up against the cage against Hill, she's going to have to deal with hard knees to the body and obviously big elbows. So there's going to be danger in that position for Richie, where there was not danger for Richie in the same position against Pennington. And Hill's balance is very good in the clinch. So on top of that, now we talk about, the probability of Richie being able to get the fight to the ground, right? So what I would say is, it's been a long time since we saw Hill face a relentless chain wrestler. The closest we've really got to compare to her, or to Richie's approach to getting the fight to the ground in terms of how Hill's fights over the last few years have played out, would be Virna Jandiroba. And Jandiroba did manage to get Hill down relatively easily. The problem with comparing Jandiroba to Richie is that Jandiroba is a lot stronger and a lot more physically imposing than Richie, whereas Richie is more slight and feminine. Her grappling control isn't as heavy or strong as Jandiroba. So whereas Jandiroba could shoot a double leg on Hill, pick her up, dump her on the ground, get a bit of top control, because Richie doesn't have that raw physicality to her MMA grappling game like Jandiroba does, I think she's going to find it a lot more difficult. However, Angela Hill's takedown offense isn't bulletproof, and the kind of chain wrestling and persistent grappling that Richie brings to the game is very difficult to deal with. So Richie probably will get takedowns in this fight. I'm unconvinced as to whether Richie has the physicality to her ground game to keep Hill on her back, because Hill these days is quite difficult to hold down. I just think Richie's a bit undersized. She's quite feminine. She's quite slight. And I think it's a real shame that there's no atom weight division in the UFC, because if there was, Richie would probably be one of the best atom weights in the world. But at strawweight, I fear she's a little bit too small to mix it up with girls like Angela Hill that are stronger, more physically imposing, and quite difficult to hold down. So to summarize everything about this fight that we've learned from our research, my lean is definitely Angela Hill in this fight. The reason being, she is a much better striker than Richie. I think she will comfortably outstrike Richie on the feet, and for sure inflict more damage than Richie on the feet. She can also inflict a lot of damage in the clinch when Richie's working for takedowns. And while I do think Richie will likely get this fight to the ground, I think she's going to struggle to hold Hill down for long enough to score any amount of meaningful points. So I basically think that Hill can go one step further than Pennington, and not only can she neutralise the threat of Richie's offensive wrestling and ground game, but I think she can do more damage to more damage to Richie, which will make it more difficult for the judges to rob Hill like they robbed Pennington, because it was a very, 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 very bad decision if you watch the fight back in its entirety. So yeah, man, it's a pretty good stylistic matchup for Hill. Now we come back to talking about betting theory, right, and betting strategy. So if we take a look at the odds, we know that we can bet both girls at the same odds, 1.91 minus 110. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we spoke about in the Borralho versus Cannonier fight, where we do well pre-fight betting on the UFC. I know my approach to pre-fight betting is boring and, very conservative, and we don't place many bets, but it's effective. It's fucking effective, because every year for the last 15 years, we've made a profit on everything that we do. Okay, and this year is no different. We're going to make a profit pre-fight betting on the UFC this year as well. We do it by sticking to core principles that we know enable us to bank a profit long term on cage fights to the death. And if you go back between like 2020 and 2021, we had a long period of break even where we were struggling to make money, and we would win some bets and then we would give it back, and we would win some bets and we'd give it back. We'd just float around break even for like a year to 18 months. And then after a while, once we built up this data, I went and looked at all the bets that I'd placed over that 12 to 18 month period and analysed all of our bets to find trends amongst our losing bets. And I found that what was happening was I was betting on a lot of older fighters who had good stylistic matchups against younger opponents, and I was consistently losing these bets over a 1 year to 18 month period. So what was happening is we'd have different categories of bets, different types of bets, different styles of bets, and I would find that we would win bets at a high percentage in a certain category, but then we would lose bets at a high percentage in another category, and that's why we were floating around break even, because we were making money on this category of bets and losing money on this category of bets. And once we took away placing bets on this category, we just consistently made profits. And over the last 2 years in pre-fight bets, we've consistently made profits most months, and we've done great. Like I say, I'm very conservative. I don't place many pre-fight bets, but when we do, they usually win. We have a very good win percentage on pre-fight bets dating back to like early 2022. So the last 2 years, we've been doing great. And the reason why we do great is because we keep it tight. We stick to principles that we know that work, and we don't deviate from strategies that we know are very effective. So when you look at Angela Hill, this is a very similar position to Jared Canonnier, where when you research this fight, it is clear that Angela Hill should be favoured. It is clear that she has advantages over Richie. It is clear that this is a better stylistic matchup for Angela Hill. However, I will say the same thing about Hill that I said about Cannonier. Sports betting is a very difficult game to play. There are very few people in the world that make a profit betting on sports. When you go on Twitter, it sounds like everybody in the fucking world is making money betting on sports. When you go on Instagram, you got all these cocks wearing Gucci tracksuits with, you know, cash on their fucking Las Vegas hotel room tables, you know, driving fucking shit cars like Bentleys. Couldn't fucking pay me to own a Bentley. They're rubbish. But shit like that, right? Cringy motherfuckers. Everyone pretends to be making money betting on sports. We know betting on sports is one of the most difficult things you can do. So very few people do it. So in order to give yourself the best chance of making money betting on sports, you want to create a favourable betting environment for yourself where essentially you're playing the game on easy mode, right? If you play a video game, you can choose what difficulty mode you want to play on. You can play the game on hard mode. You can play the game on easy mode. What you should be trying to do with sports betting is play the game on easy mode, where you can choose how difficult it is going to be for you to make a profit. Because one of the biggest weapons that we've got against betting sites and against bookies in our quest to make money in this game is that we can choose when and when not to place bets. So when I look at a bet like Angela Hill, well, she is at reasonably good odds, and this is a more favourable matchup for her. We also know that 70% of the time, the older fighter is going to lose when there is a 10-year age gap in a fight. And so it is very difficult to make money long-term cherry picking that 30% of fighters who are going to defy that trend and defy that statistic. It is going to be much easier to try and be profitable betting on the sport of mixed martial arts if you can find spots where you can bet on the younger fighter in a matchup like this that also has a good amount of advantages over their opponent, because then you've got a favourable stylistic matchup for the fighter you're looking to bet, and also you've got a very strong trend in your favour. Now, bets like that aren't going to come along very often, but that's why patience is a critical behaviour, critical component to be profitable betting on sports. It's just like poker. You might have to lay down a lot of hands. You might have to fold a lot of hands before, you know, you pick up a really strong hand that's worth playing with. That's just the way it is at the end of the day. So if you are going to bet this fight this weekend, I do think Hill is the strongest side to be on, because I do think it will be difficult for Richie to take Hill down and score enough points to win a decision. However, Hill is declining. Richie is improving. And, you know, with how persistent Richie's grappling is these days, it's not going to be an easy fight for Hill, that's for damn sure. But I do think it's a more favourable matchup for Hill than it is for Richie. So it's a great fight. It is a really, really good fight. My lean's definitely Hill. It's a fantastic fight for live betting. Obviously, our bread and butter is live betting. We're very successful at it. Over the last 15 years, we've made a profit on the majority of UFC events. We do great. This is the perfect type of fight for live betting because we've got so much footage available on both girls. We know so much about them that when the fight is happening, we should be able to read it with a pretty good degree of accuracy. So if you're not in the live betting group yet, you might want to consider it. Like I say, we do great. If you watch every UFC event live, I think you will like it a lot because it's going to give you a big edge live betting on the UFC being in our group. But if you're not, I'm really hoping that the information that I've shared with you in this breakdown, this analysis, will help you make your own betting decisions on this fight. So if we consider the over-under, obviously very likely the fight goes to a decision. Both girls are tough. Both are very well-rounded. You can see both of them absolute decisionators. Angela Hill has been to a decision in almost all of her fights from the last sort of 4 years. If you look at Richie, similar sort of story, absolute decisionator, but the odds reflect that, with it being very steep favourite odds that I wouldn't touch personally. And most likely outcome on this fight, in my opinion, is Hill by decision, but it doesn't make any sense to bet that because the odds aren't that much better than just betting Hill money line. So if you're going to bet this fight, just take Hill money line and don't overcomplicate things. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Alright, now let's break down the next fight on the card, which is the first of the Ultimate Fighter finale matchups. This one is Ryan Loder versus Robert Valentin. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Valentin is the favourite at average odds of about 1.57, which is going to be minus 175 for an implied probability of 64%. If we take a look at the odds on Loder, he's around an average of 2.40, which is going to be plus 140 for an implied probability of 42%. So Loder is 33 years old, 6'2", and we don't know what his reach is. Valentin, 29 years old, 6'2", with a 77-inch reach. So nothing too notable in terms of X factors. What I would say about these two, and this is just something that I've learned from betting on the sport for 15 years. I've bet pretty much every single Ultimate Fighter finale since the show began. Just like a little piece of advice for you if you are planning on betting these Ultimate Fighter finale matchups. Over the last 15 years, I've noticed that quite often the fighters in the Ultimate Fighter finale matchups look like not very similar to what they look like on the show. So generally speaking, a lot of the time fighters look totally different compared to how they looked on the show. I think this is probably because obviously maybe they get some money behind them, or they move to a better training camp in preparation for the finale matchup. Maybe they feel more performance anxiety because they were on a TV show, and that performance anxiety is going to build in the lead up to the fight. For whatever reason, you just get very unpredictable performances in Ultimate Fighter finale matchups. Of course, I don't mean other Ultimate Fighter finale matchups like these. I mean, you know, where the two fighters from the Ultimate Fighter are competing for a contract. So just be careful if you're betting these fights this weekend. Having said that, there's a good amount of footage available on all of the finalists, so we've got a pretty good read on how this one is most likely to go. So with Loder and Valentin, these two are, I would say this is a classic striker versus grappler matchup. Valentin is a bit more well-rounded, but in the context of this fight, because Loder is just a pure grappler, from an analysis point of view, it's probably best to look at this fight as a pure striker versus grappler type dynamic. So Loder is the kind of guy that doesn't throw a particularly high volume of strikes, isn't particularly dangerous on the feet, isn't very good defensively. He's slow, he's plodding, he throws a low volume of strikes like I say, and really this guy is looking to just avoid engaging on the feet and to use his strong wrestling to try and steal rounds with takedowns. So this fight is going to come down to whether or not Valentin can keep the fight standing, because Valentin has a big advantage on the feet. And that's basically as simple as I can make this fight for you to understand. So in order to, you know, try and predict who's more likely to win this fight, which is the stronger side to be on from a betting point of view, we really need to answer the question of how likely it is that Valentin is going to be able to keep this fight standing. So if we look at his last 5 fights, there's not that much grappling in them because they all ended relatively quickly and they were either against strikers or guys that didn't really try to take him down. So in order to get a good look at Valentin's takedown offense and ground game, we've got to go all the way back to 2022 for his fight against Ahmed Salamov. Now this fight was over 2 years ago, so obviously Valentin could have improved a lot since then. But obviously all we can do is make the best decisions possible with the information we've got available. So this fight gives us the best indication of what Valentin's takedown offense is going to be like this weekend. And ultimately his chances of keeping this fight standing. So we'll bring it up. We will bring it up and we will take a little look at it. Obviously, like I say, over the last 15 years, I've bet pretty much every Ultimate Fighter finale matchup, Ultimate Fighter finale card over the last 15 years. Just anecdotally, from my experience, guys do tend to make rapid improvements from their time on the show to when they, they fight for a contract. So, with that in mind, just bear in mind that this fight against Salamov that we're about to play was over 2 years ago. So Valentin's takedown defense and ground game could look a lot better now than it did back then. But what we will do, obviously, we're just focusing on his takedown defense and ground game here. So we're not going to spend loads of time showing you the other stuff, because I mean, if you've done your homework on this fight and you know about Loder, I think we can all agree that this is a fight that Valentin should do pretty well in if it stays standing. So Valentin is this guy here in the blue gloves. So you can see straight away Salamov gets a relatively easy takedown. Valentin does a pretty good job of trying to scramble out of it, but his opponent Salamov did a good job of keeping hold of the single leg and establishing top position. Now, this is probably the most concerning aspect of Valentin's ground game that I've seen. It's quite easy to pass his guard. So you'll see a few times in this fight, Salamov gets the mount really easily, and you can see there he just kind of steps over in the mount, like Valentin's never even been to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class. So again, 4 minutes 15 left to go on the clock. We're going to try and make this as quick as possible and skim through. But you can basically see Valentin just holds on from the bottom, looking very, very weak and very vulnerable off his back. So Salamov, holds him down relatively easily. Again, Valentin works hard to recover half guard, but then again, Salamov easily passes his guard, advances back to mount, and then Valentin tries to give his back up after kicking off the cage to escape this position, and he does shake Salamov off in a moment, which is very nice there. You can see there, all good stuff. He then gets into another grappling exchange and gets ankle picked, which we can see here. Excuse me. And then we can see with 2 minutes 40 seconds left to go in the round, he ends up back on the ground on his back. And again, for the third time in this round, just gets mounted very, very easily. We can see here Salamov literally just steps over in the mount. So this is obviously a big concern, because Valentin's quite clearly a low-level grappler who's very, very weak off his back. And even here, after the head and arm choke, Salamov just goes back to mount anytime that he wants. So if we go into round two, here you can see Salamov feinting the takedowns, single leg entry, gets it relatively easily. And second attempt is a crazy scramble, and Valentin wins the scramble. So if we scroll through, then we can see from this position, Valentin gets overly aggressive with a back take and ends up basically pulling Salamov on top of him at 3 minutes 55 left to go in the round. So if we skim through again for the fourth time in the fight, here you can see Valentin has got Salamov in his guard. So watch how easily Salamov passes his guard in the mount. So it's 3 minutes 50 seconds left to go. Steps over into side control and then straight into mount. I mean, you very rarely see someone virtually go from mount to... you very rarely see someone go from full guard to mount in the UFC. Like, it's incredibly rare. But Valentin is able to turn into Salamov. It actually looked like Salamov might have been thinking about a mounted triangle there, which is very strange, but he lost mount because of it. So here you can see Salamov keep that body lock as Valentin tries to roll for a leg. And again, all kinds of crazy scrambles in here, but again, you can see Salamov ankle picks Valentin. and ends up in top position. So you can see Valentin just one of these guys that gives up a lot of cheap takedowns. He's very weak off his back. You can probably already guess what's going to happen. Doesn't take long before Salamov pushes down on Valentin's right leg, steps over into mount. There he is, mounted again for like the 5th or 6th time in the fight. Now Valentin's done a pretty good job of scrambling out of these positions, but obviously when you're this easy to mount, you're asking for trouble in MMA. And you can see very, very weak on the ground. I don't know if it's worth showing you guys round 3. We may as well. I think I've made my point. But here, Salamov in on a single leg. Again, reaps Valentin's legs out from underneath him. You can just see Valentin, one of these guys that has pretty bad takedown defense. And we can see a weak guard, weak on the ground. He does defend the rear naked choke, turns into Salamov here, which is very nice. I think actually ends the round pretty strong. No, he gets mounted again. I forget. It's very early in the week when I watched this fight, a few days ago now. There we can see Salamov in on a single leg, reaps Valentin's legs out from underneath him, and obviously just immediately goes to mount again. I think this is like the 7th or 8th time the Valentin's been mounted in this fight, so it's quite incredible actually that he hasn't been finished. And then you can see Salamov just kind of does all kind of things to him towards the end of the round. But anyway, you can see there that Valentin, pretty bad takedown defense and a very low level ground game. So what I now want to show you is a little bit of footage on Loder, so you can see why that might be a bit of a problem. So if we go to the, I'm trying to think of the best fight to show you. Let's try this one. I can't actually remember. One of these fights I believe ended very quick and the other one didn't. Okay, it's this one. First time lucky we got there. Okay. So Loder is the guy in the green shorts. Now he's very passive, very tentative on the feet. Doesn't do a whole lot on the feet, but he is a reasonably good offensive wrestler. Has pretty good grappling control. But you can see we're 3 minutes into the fight and he hasn't shot a takedown yet, which is a bit of an issue because he is a wrestler. But if we keep going, what he tries to do is steal rounds with takedowns, and when he does commit to the takedown, he's pretty good with it. So he hasn't done much in this round, but that's a decently deep double leg entry. Picks Shaban up and drags him to the ground straight into half guard. So you can kind of see from that takedown entry how effective that could be against someone with takedown defense as bad as Valentin, right? If we go into round 2, see another takedown entry coming up here. Nice single leg there. Shaban straight back up. Shaban, don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, his opponent. You know, attempts another double leg there. Looks for an outside trip. Didn't quite tie the legs of Shaban up. And then if we keep skipping through, you can see he doesn't shoot many takedowns, but when he does, he commits hard to them. Nice double leg entry there. And you can see Shaban pops right back up to his feet, which is very nice, but sticks to him like glue. In on another double leg, drags Shaban to the ground. So you can see how this style, Loder's style, could be a real problem for Loder. Sorry, for Valentin, you know, as he's Loder's all over him here. And if we go into round 3, and Loder's cardio is pretty good here. Like you can see, he's moving all right, he's breathing all right, all that good stuff. No major issues here. But he doesn't shoot that many takedowns. He shot a lot of takedowns in round 2, but in the first round and in this third round, he didn't. But then you know what he's going to try and do? Just kind of coast, because he won the first 2 rounds. So, didn't put himself in any danger. So that's kind of Loder. So, this is a tricky fight for betting, because we know Valentin will have improved a lot over the last 2 years, but we don't know to what extent he's improved. So, based on the footage that we've got, you'd obviously be crazy to bet Valentin at you know, 1.57 minus 175 odds for an implied probability of 64%. You'd have to be a crazy person to bet Robert Valentin, because we've literally just seen footage from 2 years ago, the last time you know, his takedown offense and ground game was tested, where the guy's takedown offense and ground game is a joke. And then we've just looked at footage of Loder, where he's a decent MMA grappler, right? Decent offensive wrestler. So you'd have to be crazy, or you'd have to hate money to bet on Valentin at these odds. But the question is whether you want to take Loder at 2.40 plus 140 for an implied probability of 42%, when we know that there's a good chance Valentin will have improved a lot in the last 2 years, because there's issues with Loder, right? He doesn't shoot that many takedowns. He has no striking. So if Valentin has improved his takedown defense and ground game a bit, and he can keep this fight standing, he's clearly going to beat Loder on the feet. So it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. It's a bit of a gamble. It is a bit of a gamble. Let me know how you feel about it. In order for me to bet a fight, in order for me to pull the trigger pre-fight, I would want a bit more clarity on what to expect from both guys. I would want to have seen Valentin's takedown offense and ground game tested a bit more recently than 2022, because for me, he's a bit of an unknown coming in, unfortunately. But yeah, that's pretty much how I see this fight. Let me know what you think. And yeah, it's a tricky one for betting, but again, a very good fight for very good fight for live betting. So hopefully you're in the live betting group. So the over on this fight set at over 1.5 rounds. I do lean towards over 1.5 rounds. I'm very tempted to bet over 1.5 rounds. The only thing at the moment which makes me a little bit nervous is Valentin is a little bit chinny. I don't think it's going to be an issue in this fight, because Loder's not at all dangerous on the feet, but Valentin does get rocked, wobbled, dropped in a lot of his fights. And if he has improved his takedown defense and ground game, I think Loder's a bit of a sitting duck on the feet, so he could easily get knocked out. But over 1.5 rounds is pretty tempting. I might bet it. I'll give it some thought. But I think on cards like this, where I'm struggling to find bets, I don't want to be forcing bets. I want to be keeping it chill, keeping it patient, and hopefully snipe some money, snipe some profits in live betting. We really don't want to be forcing bets on tough cards like this. We want to wait for those strong positions to come along where they're clear and obvious to us. So in terms of the prop bets on this one, if I was going to hit a prop, I do quite like Loder by decision, 5.5 plus 450, because I could see Valentin improving his takedown defense and ground game a bit, but not enough to keep the fight standing. And I could just see Loder kind of spamming takedowns, wet blanketing Valentin, just kind of grinding him out on the floor. So yeah, I do quite like Loder by decision, 5.5 plus 450. If you want to place a prop on this to gamble a little bit, make watching him more fun, I would go for that. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Now let's break down another very interesting fight on this card. It's the second Ultimate Fighter finale matchup between Santos and Ofli. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Ofli is the underdog at average odds of about 2.50, which is going to be plus 150 for an implied probability of 40%. And if we take a look at the odds on Mr. Santos, he's going to be around an average of 1.55, which is going to be minus 182 for an implied probability of 65%. So Santos is 24 years old, 5'9" with a 72-inch reach, and Ofli, 31 years old, 5'6". We don't know what his reach is. So bit of an age gap between these two. We could see Santos is very young. He's only 24 years old. So he's going to be making big improvements from fight to fight, and he's already pretty good. So I would expect him to look a lot different than he has in past fights. And in terms of the size difference between these two, we don't know what Ofli's reach is, but I would imagine Santos has a reach advantage here, because 72-inch reach of someone that's 5'9" is pretty long. And both these guys are very different body types. So Ofli has like a small, muscular, compact frame. Think of like an Alexander Volkanovski body type. And Santos is long and lean and a bit more lanky. So real interesting stylistic matchup this. Another clash of styles where we've got a striker in Santos versus a grappler in Can Ofli. So again, when we're breaking this fight down and we're analysing it, trying to work out which is the stronger side to be on, we're trying to answer the question of whether or not Santos can keep this fight standing for long enough to use his advantages on the feet. And I'm a lot more confident in Santos being able to keep this fight standing than I am Ofli, for reasons that I will show you, obviously with a little bit of footage. So I'm not sure where Mr. Mayron Santos is training. It says his affiliation is Piranha Vale Tudo, which I'm pretty sure is the gym of Jess Grandrage and kind of fighters like that. I could be mistaken on that, but I think that's where they train. But anyway, when I watch footage of him, he very much looks like a Nova União fighter. You know how some training camps have got, or some gyms I should say, have got like specific styles, which a lot of their fighters kind of have the same style. Like a lot of shooter boxers have the same style. A lot of Team Alpha Male fighters have the same style. Mayron Santos looks very much like a Nova União fighter. So I would be interested to know if he does train at Nova União or has trained at Nova União, because he is from Rio de Janeiro, where Nova União is based. I will soon find out on Saturday night, but he very much looks like a Nova União fighter, particularly because of his approach to takedown defense. He very much looks like a mini Reynan Barao or Jose Aldo from back in the day, with how he carries himself defending takedowns. So first of all, let's just go through the striking. Let's just tick that off the list. If the fight stays standing, Santos will have a pretty big advantage. Can Ofli is just one of these blue collar, gritty, determined kind of wrestle boxers, but on the feet he's really just looking to get you down, hold you down, and wet blanket you. His striking's not particularly good. He's a little bit sloppy, not the most technical. Santos, on the other hand, is a real technician on the feet. He doesn't really sit down on his shots too hard, doesn't do too much damage, is not that aggressive on the feet, doesn't throw particularly high volume of strikes, but he's very technical, very good defensively, and he likes to take control of the center of the octagon, just dictate the pace of the fight and just chip away at you on the feet. So from a technical point of view, there's a big gap between these two. When it comes to striking, Santos is a significantly better striker than Ofli. It isn't even close. So while Santos is a little bit passive at times, and Ofli's aggression and hustle may be able to make rounds visually close, I don't think there's any doubt that in this one Santos can have a pretty big advantage on the feet. So in order for Ofli to win this fight, he's going to need to get this fight to the ground and use his grappling. So that's not going to be an easy thing to do, because when I said Santos very much looks like a fighter who has trained for a long time at Nova União, that was predominantly because of the way that he carries himself with takedown defense and defensive wrestling. It's very, very, very good. And Can Ofli's offensive wrestling isn't the best. So I'm going to show you a bit of footage of Mayron Santos' takedown defense, and generally speaking, it is top tier excellent. My problem with Mayron Santos is, or when it comes to defensive wrestling and takedown defense, is kind of the same problem that I have with him when it comes to striking, in that he does lack urgencies and he's a little bit passive at times. So when he's put in a bad position, a bad grappling position, he takes a long time to work out of it, which I don't like. When he stuffs that initial takedown entry, he immediately scrambles out of there and he's really good. But if his opponent gets him down or gets close to getting him down, he takes an eternity to work his way back up to his feet, which does complicate this fight a bit because Ofli can be relentless with the wet blanket. So if we bring a little bit of fight footage up, we will start with Mr. Mayron Santos. And what fight shall we go with? Again, I've completely forgotten the name of the guy that I want to show you him fight. Will we be first time lucky? I don't think it's this guy. It is not this guy. So we will go to... Oh, actually, I will show you a little bit of footage from this fight just very quickly while we've got it up. I will. Why not? So what we'll do is skim through this fight very, very quick so you can start to build a picture of the range in which Santos likes to fight in, and also his takedown defense. So we're just going to skip through, so we're only focused on takedown defense here, but this fight against Guillermo Torres will show you a little bit of Mayron Santos' takedown defense and ground game, and then the next fight I show you against Edwin Cooper will show you a lot more. So this will kind of lay the foundation. So here you can see obviously Santos in the blue, and just pay attention to his balance ultimately. His balance and his athleticism. You can see Torres in on a nice single leg here, but Santos keeps his legs underneath him with good balance, and just looks really strong, really comfortable in this position. Does a good job of using the cage to defend the takedown. He got that underhook on the right side, overhook on the right side, sorry, goes that underhook on the left side. We just skim through. Torres just forced to give it up because he doesn't have anything. We can keep going. Right towards the end of round one. Nice single leg entry. Goes to the high crotch. But again, you can see Santos do a really good job of getting his left side to the cage and immediately standing back up. So that's good stuff, man. Obviously, he did get taken down, but he immediately looked to scramble out of there. Into round two. Like I say, the next fight I show you, you're going to see a lot more of Santos' defensive wrestling. So beautiful flying knee. Torres jumps right in on a single leg, tries to go to a double leg. But you can see Santos just very, very good in this position. Really strong in this position. Does a good job of using the cage to defend the takedown. Nice overhook on the left side. And he's going to be so much better. Like, he's only 23, 24 years old here. You can see just very comfortable. And Torres, again, forced to let it go. Just very good takedown defense. There we go. And then again, Torres comes in on a takedown attempt. Hurt him with the right hand, comes in. Tries to get to the double leg, connects his hands together, does get it. But you can see Santos immediately scrambles back up to his feet. Beautiful work. And again, turns into Torres. Scrambles out of there. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. And just as you can see, just really good defensive wrestling. Really good takedown defense. All good stuff, man. All good stuff. Another takedown attempt here. Tries to hit an outside trip off a body lock. Again, great balance from Santos to kind of stay upright and scramble over to the cage. Just really, really, really good takedown defense, man. Really, really good takedown defense. He's crossing his legs over on the wrong side here, but just great balance, great athleticism. Does a really good job of stuffing the takedown. And as we skip through, you can see here a big double leg takedown entry from Torres. Drives across the cage. But you can see Santos gets to his knees, starts to fight with the overhook, and immediately pops back up. It's such a good job from Santos, and he just trots out of there. Beautiful work, to the point where Santos at the end of the fight fancies his own little takedown attempt here. He's like, why not? I've done everything else. Let's go for a little takedown. So that was all good stuff, man. Santos' defensive wrestling, takedown defense looked great. And what's interesting about Santos is we were saying how much guys improve when they're as young as Santos in a short space of time. And you can actually see improvement between his two fights on the Contender Series, which are obviously not on his fight record because they're exhibition bouts. But you'll see here there are more weaknesses, there are more issues in Santos' defensive wrestling in this fight. Which you'll kind of see, right? So again, Edwin Cooper shoots a really nice single leg entry here. And Santos does a good job of, again, feeding him that single leg, staying upright, having great balance. Cooper drives through on a takedown attempt, does drag him down, and these are where some issues do start to arise for Santos. So For me, Santos does a really good job of scrambling over to the cage, getting his left side tight to the cage where you can use the cage as a base to defend himself, to protect himself from having his back taken. But if we look at the time here, right, so there's 4 minutes left to go in the round when he has managed to scramble over to the cage. Cooper doesn't have a lot here. He doesn't really have the legs tied up too bad. Santos can work to free this right leg, and he doesn't have control of the body. He's kind of just weighing on him. You'd want Santos to show a lot of urgency to work through this position like he did in the first fight that I showed you. But he kind of hesitates a lot here. So if we keep going, you can even hear his corner, Diego Lopez and Alexa Grasso, kind of telling him, come on, let's go, Mayron. Because he's kind of just hesitating here. Now, he's been in this position for about a minute now. And, you know, now he's been in this position for about 2 minutes. When really his opponent, Cooper, at many stages throughout this grappling position, hasn't had a lot. All Santos really needed to do was turn into Santos to defend this position and start to get his back off the cage in many ways, like he did against the fight that I just showed you. So here he's been on the ground for 3 minutes in this position, or not on the ground, but stuck in this position for 3 minutes. And then finally, he does turn into Cooper, gets that underhook on the left side. And then inevitably gets his back off the cage. But I feel he could have done that like 2.5 minutes ago if he would have shown more urgency. So it's just a little bit concerning, because obviously it's possible Santos could be one of these guys that has really, really, really good takedown defense. But if you do get him down, he's potentially quite easy to control. But he is very young, and the mistake that we've just seen just could be down to a lack of experience, and it can be a very, very simple thing to improve, just getting them to show a bit more urgency in those positions. So as you can see, Cooper didn't really try to take him down in round 2. And then in round 3, we get a little bit more grappling. Here we go. And this is where you can start to see, you know, really good takedown defense again from Santos. Takedown entry there. Santos reads this, shows him strong hips. Goes for another one here. Beautiful sprawl out of this takedown coming up. Look at that. Before Cooper even gone near him. And then another one here as well. Look at that. Beautiful sprawl. That's 3 in a row. Nice hat trick for Santos. And then another one here. So Cooper's trying really hard to get the fight to the ground. Another beautiful sprawl. You can see that Santos is not going to be an easy guy to get down. Then right at the end of the round though, Cooper drives through on this single leg. And again, critical time in the round. 1:10 left to go. Look, Santos' takedown defense looks absolutely great. It really does. But at a critical time in this round, when Cooper kind of walks him over to the cage like this, he's just showing us that he can work through these positions with urgency, but he chose not to in round 1. Like, look at this beautiful sprawl out of this takedown there. Cooper does get the takedown, and then this is where it does get a little bit concerning. Obviously, there's only 35 seconds left in the round. But again, just positions like this. Just kind of hesitates in this position, working through them. You know, there's no reason why he can't just stand back up here, other than now in the 3rd round because he's tired. You need to stand up, turn into Cooper, but he just takes a long time to do everything. You know he knows how to do it because he's proved in the fight. He just takes too long. Now, I would love to know where he's training. If you know where he's training for this fight, please let me know. If he's gone to ATT or somewhere like that, or if he is at Nova União, then he probably will look a lot better. But yeah, Santos, man, decent. I'll show you a quick bit of footage, I guess, on Mr. Can Ofli. Why not? Just so you can kind of see the type of stylistic matchup that this is. And why I am very tempted to bet Mayron, and I may bet him. I don't love the odds, but I am impressed by him. I just worry that we haven't seen him on his back because of how damn difficult he is to take down. And if he gets put on his back, could be trouble. So here we go. So Ofli obviously in the blue. Double leg entry there. Gets it. And again, I don't want to make this breakdown super long, so I'm just going to kind of fly through it. But you can already kind of see the kind of guy Ofli is. Just a strong wrestler type dude with a compact body type. And this is the thing, man. Like, I asked myself, how would Mayron Santos look if a guy just kind of like Ofli, big and strong, just kind of picked him up, dumped him on his back in the middle of the octagon, got on top of him? How would that look? Would he be completely out of his depth? You know, double leg entry there. It's obviously not going to be easy for Ofli to get takedowns, but if he does get them, is he just going to be able to kind of smother Santos in pressure and drown him? Because Santos, at only 24 years old, is going to have big holes in his game. Is Santos going to be one of these guys that's got great takedown defense, but if you do get him down, put him on his back, is he going to be very, very weak off his back? And is Ofli just going to be able to lie on top of him and absolutely dominate him? That would be my concern if I were betting this fight. That would certainly be my concern. And so it's an interesting matchup. The issue I have with this fight is obviously the odds. Santos, pretty big favourite. His odds carry an implied probability of about 64%. If it was the even money odds range, I'd be like, you know what, I'll take a shot on him, because I do think it'll be very difficult for Ofli to take him down and hold him down for long enough to win the fight. But at these odds, you know, in order to get a decent margin of value, I'd want to be capping Santos at like 70%, which I think is a pretty difficult thing to do, just because in that fight against Cooper, there just were signs that he hesitates a little bit in grappling positions, and Ofli will spam takedowns, and Ofli will be a lot better as well this weekend. So in terms of the over-under on this one, we don't actually have any props at the moment. Let me just refresh this. The fight was obviously only released today. We might have some more stuff now. Not a whole lot, to be fair. Okay, so the over-under is set at over 1.5 rounds. I do think that's very likely to hit. The odds are quite steep, although it actually looks like no props have been released yet. This fight only got announced a few hours ago, so yeah, can't really help you with that. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Now let's break down the next fight on this card, which is going to be Michael Morales versus Neil Magny. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Morales is one of the biggest favourites on the card. The average odds are about 1.11, which is going to be minus 909 for an implied probability of 90%. We take a look at the odds on Magny, he's around an average of 6.50, which is going to be plus 550 for an implied probability of 15%. So Morales is 25 years old, 6 foot tall with a 79-inch reach, and Magny is 37 years old, 6'3" with an 80-inch reach. So obviously Magny against most people has got a decent reach advantage, but not the case this weekend. They've got about the same reach, but Magny is a bit taller. Obviously what Morales lacks in the height department in this fight, he more than makes up for in physicality and athleticism. The guy looks like a superhero. Obviously we can also see a massive age gap between these two. Morales is 12 years younger than Magny, and the younger fighter wins around 70% of the time, 7-0, when there's a 12-year age gap in a fight. And Magny is obviously on a pretty steep decline. He has been looking worse and worse from fight to fight. And Morales, at just 25 years old, is going to be making big improvements. So it's obviously a very bad stylistic matchup for Magny. At this stage in their careers, Morales is probably better than Magny everywhere. He hits harder. He's a stronger grappler. You know, I can't think of anything at this stage in their careers that Magny does better than Morales. Now, obviously, Magny over the last few years has been able to rack up a few wins here and there, just being able to outwork his opponents because he's tough as nails and he's got a great gas tank. I don't see that being that likely this time because Morales is also pretty tough and also has a great gas tank. He's durable. Magny's never really had too much power in his hands. So this is one of those fights where Morales will probably land the harder, more damaging, more impactful shots on the feet and outstrike Magny. And also, if the fight goes to the ground, Morales is going to be the stronger, more physically imposing grappler. And we know Magny has pretty bad takedown offense and he's very, very weak off his back. So I don't think Morales is one of the kind of guys that's going to fade under Magny's pressure like some of Magny's opponents over the last few years. It's a really good fight for Morales. He should win easily. Obviously, his odds reflect that, and they're very, very steep. I mean, look, you can't bet Morales at these odds. It's just crazy. You'd have to give him like a 95% chance of winning in order to get any value, which is impossible when you think about the fact that Morales could get injured, or he could get disqualified, or, you know, he could be sick or have a bad weight cut, or any number of things. Just might not be feeling it that night. So you can't bet Morales at those odds, but obviously if you do bet Magny, you're putting your money in a lot of danger because he doesn't really have many paths to victory. If you really, really, really want to bet this fight, you've got to take Magny because it would make no sense to bet Morales at these odds. But it's not very likely you're going to win, and the odds reflect that. In terms of the over-under, I do think there's a pretty good chance this fight goes to a decision. Both guys are tough. Both guys are durable. Even though Magny is on a decline, I wouldn't say that he is not durable anymore. Obviously, he's been submitted a couple times against Burns and Rachmanov, but for the most part, Morales likes to stand and bang and keep his striking, and we can see, you know, 4 of his last 5 have almost gone to a decision. The Adam Fugit fight came very, very close to going to a decision. We know Magny's very tough, very durable. He's still going deep in fights against some reasonably dangerous opponents. So I do think this fight is quite likely to go to a decision. I don't love the odds just because old guys find ways to lose. And if Morales were to grapple hard in this fight, we know Magny's ground game is very bad. Submission defense very bad. Which is why he's lost a couple fights by submission in recent years. But obviously Rachmanov and Burns pretty nasty on the ground. Not that Morales isn't nasty on the ground either, but Morales does prefer to stand and strike for the most part. So in terms of most likely outcomes, I do quite like Morales. Well, I do like Morales by decision as the most likely outcome, but the odds are absolutely dreadful. But if you do want to sprinkle a little bit of money on this fight to make watching more interesting, Morales by decision is the most likely prop, in my opinion. I just think the odds are absolutely dreadful. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Now let's move on to breaking down the next fight on the card, which is going to be Gerald Meerschaert versus Edmen Shahbazyan. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this, we can see that Shahbazyan is one of the biggest favourites on the card. Average odds are about 1.33, which is going to be minus 303 for an implied probability of 75%. If we take a look at the odds on Meerschaert, he is around an average of 3.40, which is going to be plus 240 for an implied probability of 29%. So Meerschaert is 36 years old, 6'1", with a 77.5-inch reach. And Shahbazyan, 26 years old, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach. So both guys are about the same size, but we can see a massive 10-year age gap between these two. And of course, we've spoken a lot about these stats already in this week's breakdowns, where the younger fighter does win around 70% of the time when there's a 10-year age gap in a fight, which does give Shahbazyan a big statistical edge. What's also interesting about that is Shahbazyan's implied probability is around 75%, which is in the ballpark of where that statistic is. It's kind of crazy how Shahbazyan's only 26 years old, because it feels like he's been in the UFC forever. He's obviously had a lot of fights in the UFC. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, yeah, 10 UFC fights for a 26-year-old is kind of crazy. And here we are. So Shahbazyan's going to be making big improvements from fight to fight. Unfortunately, he's hampered by his bad gas tank. I feel at this point it's pretty unlikely that Shahbazyan will improve his cardio. I think it's probably like a genetic thing, just because I'm sure he eats good, I'm sure he trains good. So for him to still be at the point where he gasses in every fight, there's probably a lot more going on than something that Shahbazyan can fix easily, I would imagine. Could be wrong on that, but he gasses in pretty much every fight that goes past the first round, so I don't see this one being any different. And for that reason, this is an interesting matchup because Shahbazyan is better than Meerschaert in every single aspect of MMA. We know Meerschaert is slow on the feet to the extent that at times it looks like he's almost fighting underwater. Bad defensively, slow on the feet, sitting duck to the knockout, not that dangerous offensively. On the ground, his takedown offense is terrible. He gives up cheap takedowns. He's very, very weak off his back. But Meerschaert is one of those guys that's built a career off toughness, durability, and a great gas tank. And if his opponents start to fade, or if his opponents start to make mistakes, Meerschaert is really good at making them pay for it. And Meerschaert is one of these interesting fighters who is very bad on the ground defensively, but very strong offensively. So if you shoot takedowns on him, you'll give him up easily, and you can lay on top of him, beat him up pretty easily. But Meerschaert is one of these guys that if he senses you're starting to fade and he starts to take you down and get into top position, he's an absolute nightmare. And that's where this fight gets interesting, because early on, Meerschaert is going to get absolutely smoked because he's not going to be able to compete with Shahbazyan standing up or on the ground. But if Meerschaert can weather the early storm, which there's a pretty good chance he can because he's tough as nails and he's built a career off weathering early storms, then if he can drag Shahbazyan into the second and third rounds, things can get interesting. It will take a very experienced live bettor to profit from a fight like this, though, because if you are live betting this fight yourself, just be aware of the fact that Meerschaert's takedown defense is a joke. So even a very tired Edmen Shahbazyan can still have a lot of success with grappling because he won't have to exert that much energy to get Meerschaert down and lay on top of him. So just be careful if you're live betting it. If you're in our live betting group, you obviously don't have to worry about that because I've spent a lot of time researching these two, so I'm very, very familiar with all the kind of pitfalls and issues that you could run into if you're playing on live betting a matchup such as this. And so, yeah, it's an interesting fight. Obviously, it's very difficult to bet on Shahbazyan this weekend in this odds range because, I mean, you'd have to be crazy to bet on a guy in this odds range carrying an implied probability of 75% that we know might only have one round of cardio in him, is prone to adrenaline dumping. You know, there are a lot of ways that Shahbazyan can lose this fight. On the flip side, if you were to bet Meerschaert, he is second best from a technical point of view everywhere, and like I say, his takedown defense is so bad that even if Shahbazyan does gas, we know Shahbazyan's tough, he's tenacious, he's persistent. Because Shahbazyan gasses in every fight that goes past round one, fighting tired is very much in his comfort zone. So if Meerschaert is going to give up cheap takedowns when Shahbazyan does get tired, it might not be enough to you know, to upset Shahbazyan here and Meerschaert pick up the win. So yeah, it's a great fight. It's clearly dog or pass. You'd have to be a crazy person to bet a fighter with bad cardio in Shahbazyan's odds range. Not saying Shahbazyan won't win, he probably will, that's why he's a big favourite, but you're getting a really bad deal if you bet Shahbazyan at these odds. In terms of the props and the over-under, I do think it's pretty likely this fight goes over 1.5 rounds just because of how tough and well-rounded they both are. Like I say, even when Shahbazyan gets very tired, he is still a tough fucker. And you can see a lot of Meerschaert's recent fights over the last few years have gone over 1.5 rounds. And if you look at Shahbazyan's fights, you know, 2, 4, 5 of his last 6 have also gone over 1.5 rounds as well. So I do think that the over 1.5 rounds is a decent bet here. Obviously it's risky because Meerschaert is a sitting duck, standing up and on the ground, but at the same time pretty good value when you consider 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of, oh, we can discount that, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of Meerschaert's last 7 have gone over 1.5 rounds, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of Shahbazyan's last 6. So I actually really like that over 1.5 rounds. We'll probably take that, I would imagine, so we'll post it in Discord soon enough. In terms of the most likely outcomes on this one for props, you know what, Shahbazyan by decision's a bit mad. Shahbazyan by decision at 7.0 plus 600. Those odds are kind of mad. I could see that hitting. That's a pretty good prop. I do like that. The reason being, if Shahbazyan doesn't get a first round finish, then he's probably going to be too tired to get a finish in rounds 2 and 3 because of how tough Meerschaert is. But he likely has enough energy to steal one of the second or third rounds with some grappling with how bad Meerschaert's takedown defense is. So that is a very, very interesting one. Very, very interesting. So yeah, Shahbazyan by decision. I quite like that. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. And with that, that's it for this week's video. If you like these breakdown videos, you want to watch breakdown videos for all the prelim fights on this card, you can find them on my website, MMABettingTips.com. On this page here, just find all the breakdown videos with uncensored footage as well. They're all being uploaded as we speak. So if you want to watch my breakdowns where you can actually see the footage of the fights that I'm breaking down, go check it out. If you're not in the live betting group, why are you not in the live betting group? We make a profit on the vast majority of events over the last 8 years, and we're about to enter a golden age for betting on the UFC. So thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It will help me out a lot, and we'll be back next week with another breakdown video. So thank you very much, everyone. Love you all. Take care. Hope you crush it and make loads of money on Saturday night, and I will see you all very soon. Nice one, guys. Take care. Bye.